Glen, Higgs and Stevan, Bubalo. We're going to discuss everything about the housing crisis. Is it really happening, or is it a myth? Is it fake news? Stay tuned.
Coming up.
Good evening, everyone. Novak late night news with Glen, Higgs and Stevan Bubalo. Stev, is there a housing crisis?
I will say yes, there is. The reason I say that is just the number of Australians that are struggling to get into a home, one to buy or two to rent, would lead me to believe there's not enough properties for us for the future.
Well, let's break this down a little bit. We'll talk a bit of statistics. We'll talk a bit of solutions. We'll analyse how this happened. But like well-mannered young men, we won't talk about politics, religion, or how much money Stev earns. So we'll keep it pretty PG. So a housing shortage. Is there a housing shortage? Well, the numbers are proving that. We have anecdotal numbers. Tenants can't get a property. High numbers that are open for inspections. Even after 14 rate rises, we've had a bit of a pause. Properties are still moving. Prices are still going up. If you believe in supply and demand, rents are going up.
Yeah, rents have shot up drastically over the last probably 8-month period.
So low supply, high demand. Unfortunately, consumers pay for it. And the consumers that pay the most for it are generally those at the lower end of the income sort of earnings. People with higher incomes are taking advantage of this. People on low incomes really hard. Absolutely. Just to give you a bit of an idea, I jumped on the web and the World Wide Web and home ownership. And these were predominantly first home buyers, 25 to 34. In the last 2 decades, has declined from 52% of everyone in that age group, 25 to 34. So 25 to 34, finished an apprenticeship, you're outgoing, started your first job, you moved up the greasy ladder a little bit, finished uni, that's all happening. You're saving, you're renting, and then you're going out and buying a home. From 52% back in about 2004 to now around 29%. So that's a huge drop. Change. Where are these people living? Well, they're renting properties, but that's high, or they're still at home with mum and dad. And you only have to look at the number of granny flat companies that trade to know that they're building something in their parents' backyard if they have the opportunity to do so. The other thing about this housing crisis and pushing prices up, that only 1.6% of all the properties for rent are affordable by people on a low income. Okay?
Tough. Really tough.
So you're out there, you're working, your wife might be looking after a few kids, or your partner, your wife's working, and so on. There's all different. Glenn. Yeah, Steve, it's my aftershave. There's all different sorts of families, as we know, but on that low income, you can't afford to rent, or only 1.6% of all the rental properties. So once again, people are doing it tough. 2 families living in one home, people going back with their parents, even with a family. All this just points to a housing crisis.
I think you also got to look at the cost of building. Now, you might be jumping to that, Glenn. I don't know if I'm jumping the gun on you or not, but housing approvals are also down. I think in the last 20 years, we've only seen housing approvals lower than we are at the current moment twice. So a real dip in the number of new dwellings being approved to be built, and then you factor in obviously the cost of building now. COVID had a big impact on shipping and moving product, particularly from the Asian markets and Europe, that we need to build homes here with, not helping at all.
And we've also, getting back to people renting, we've also taken rental properties out of the market with short-term rentals.
Yeah, absolutely.
So properties that would traditionally rent in coastal towns to people that lived in that town have gone on to the short-term rental market. That's a pretty easy one to work out. Country towns, mining towns. So once again, we've eliminated the number of properties that are around. And even on the latest, building projections, we're 60,000 houses down on where we should be.
Well, I saw an interesting statistic, and it said that if we can improve our housing supply by 10%, it's going to improve it's going to reduce the stress on our housing market by 25%. So if we can deliver 10% more properties, it's going to reduce that stress by 25%. So, and it's a hard thing too. It's generally a state government initiative from here, Glen. We're not going to talk politics tonight again, but I think a solution to it will be building, but we're going to get to some solutions soon.
Okay, so the other thing, whenever there's a problem, blame the new guy. Blame the new guy.
That's right.
Someone starts at Novak, something goes wrong. Oh, the new guy did it. And we've got a history of that in Australia. We blame immigration.
Yep. Well, I mean, we've been quite fortunate. Immigration hasn't been that hot of a topic in the last, probably 4 or 5 years with COVID. But if anything, that's going to open back up. We're going to see, immigration again, boosting our workforce and labour numbers as well.
Well, one of the great success stories in Australia's history has been immigration. We're all, Stevan, myself, we're all part of people that migrated here for a better life or perceived better life. And, it's been a great success story. But once again, that puts pressure on our housing stock.
Yep.
Stevie, you did a bit of research. You want to run through
some quick research. It was just some strategies that might be considered. But before I get into them, something I was thinking about and looking at planning, and obviously we're quite involved with new development work here. And obviously, when you look at Australia on a map, I don't know the percentage. I probably should know it, but the number of Australians that actually live along the coastline would be, I don't know, I'm going to take a stab and say 85%, maybe even higher. So really, is it a matter of simply just building and pushing out? We're here on the eastern side of Australia, pushing west and filling up land. Maybe. I think another solution might also be is looking at going up.
Well, looking at going up, and we're firm advocates of that. We sell a lot of high rise at Novak, or low rise. They're only up to 8 stories, but getting that population going up vertical rather than horizontal. We do that in DY. It's been a great success. So we've put on about 1,000 more dwellings in DY over the past decade.
Yep.
And that's all been going up. 7 stories, 15 stories, 17 stories. And then what we've been able to do is use existing corridors like Pittwater Road into the city. And then we've just put double-decker buses on there, not we, but those in charge have put double-decker buses on there that run like trains. No timetable, just run every 5 minutes and ferry people back to the city. There's been a little bit of additional traffic because you still need a car to get around the Sydney Metropolitan. But
no solutions without its challenges.
Solutions without its challenges. But the infrastructure to go and do a big subdivision, we're past Oran Park now in Sydney. We're out Pitt Town, past Kellyville and those areas in the northwest. You need to build a lot of roads to do that. So they're using the existing ones. It often surprises me when people complain against high density living, you know, they don't want it in their backyard, but it has to go somewhere.
And that's a good point, Glenn. Like, I think of it, I grew up in Warriewood, for those that know it, on the Northern Beaches. It's probably one of the most recent suburbs to go through a huge transformation, and there's always been a lot of pushback to the rezoning that's happened there. And people will say to me, oh, we don't want that, we don't want that. But where do you want your kids to live? You know, and most people will say, I want them to live near me, I want them to live here, grow up like we grew up, enjoy that. Well, they're going to need to live somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not just a solution of they're going to stay with you.
And, you know, like, we can just talk about the Northern Beaches by going up vertically and increasing density that way. You know, we've got a new hospital. We've got better transport into the city. Our high street shops are starting to lease out. Step does the commercial. We just get more facilities in general. Our high schools are full.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, like,
look at the catchment.
we had a situation where high schools were actually being torn down in Beacon Hill, for example, Beacon Hill High, and turned into you know, residential building blocks. So we had a decrease in the number of people, but by doing that, DY Public School was almost about to fold. 10 years ago, it had one kindergarten class. Now every year they enroll 5 to 6. So it's just a part of it.
Well, you can live in DY, in the suburb of DY, and your child might not be going to DY Public School. Could be going to Brookvale. Could be going to NARRAWEENA.
So, you know, the notion of then going regional and going interstate and so on, the vast majority of people, when they first come to Australia, start off in Melbourne and Sydney. Employment's good there. Plus, they may have relatives there.
Generally,
and then following where their relatives are for some familiarity. Just to go further west, you know, how far west can you go? Where some areas of Sydney, we're 65 to 70 k's away from the city. We're still, you know, in the metropolitan. So it's very, very interesting. Another big pushback you get with density is now these executive studios. We're getting some built here. You know, maybe 60 years ago, they were boarding houses. Now they're 20 to 30 square metre rooms with all the facilities, cooking, bathroom, a open plan lounge, sort of bedroom. And we can't lease enough of them. They give people the flexibility not to share a house, not to live with their parents. They're somewhat affordable. They average between $450 a week to $500. You know, essential workers. And don't just think of essential workers as we found in COVID, as people that work, you know, police and ambulance drivers and nurses. They're also people that stack the shelves in Coles. They're, you know, people that work in the deli.
Absolutely.
People that work in the restaurants. People that are your barista. Ordering out coffee is probably not essential.
And that's another topic for discussion too, Glenn. But like you said, you know, sorry, I can't remember the numbers you said this morning, how many are deemed affordable by today's population.
Well, if you're on a low income, 1.6 of all rental properties are affordable for you.
I'm going to say it this way. What's a house cost here to lease? Like on the Northern Beaches, you're paying north of $1,000 a week. Pretty much. Who's to say that that's affordable? You know,
that's after tax money. That's you know, and we can get into that you can negative gear a property if you have the means to get a tax credit. So, you know, it's grim. It's grim, and something needs to be done about it. You know, otherwise we have people sleeping in the cars.
In trouble. Guys, so I've come up with a few solutions. Hopefully some of them will help. Whether or not they're taken on board, we'll see. But obviously the first and most basic one is to increase the housing supply. So simply coming out, let's look at building more dwellings, essentially. That's it.
And then the easiest way there is just to lift the height.
Absolutely.
Is just to
incentivize these developers, which a lot of people might think I'm saying the wrong thing there, but you know, you need to incentivize somebody to build this product for the people as well. I'm just gonna say out of the politics again.
Yeah,
But,
yeah. Well,
you know, at some points
in a capitalist democracy, people got to
Yeah.
make money to do
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, so we need to incentivize them to do that. Affordable housing, obviously, look, there is a large government program, obviously initiatives behind it as well, but maybe, you know, the government could do a better job in maybe streamlining those and making those work a bit better, particularly for lower income families that are struggling, first home buyers.
Well, there's once again, there are some incentives out there for developers build to rent.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll see the large banks get into programs like that where they're building properties and looking at the rental returns.
Zoning again and permitted land use. So maybe coming back again, it is such a divided topic, but you know, looking at increasing the heights, looking at increasing the densities, going from maybe what we call an R2 or a medium density, whereas typically a housing suburban neighborhood, to what we call an R3, which would typically be a 9-meter height, you know, allowance for buildings. So obviously rezoning will definitely open up a lot more property options. Urban renewal. So again, not just rezoning, but, you know, tidying up areas that might be a little bit more tight or predominantly, you know, larger commercial zones, which maybe don't serve the purpose of commercial effectively or efficiently anymore. First home buyers obviously something that we talk about all the time, trying to help people get into properties. And I think, like we hear it all the time, the first home buyer grants are now, you know, under 800,000. You don't pay stamp duty. Up to $1 million, you don't pay stamp duty. Let's be realistic. You can't buy a house on the Northern Beaches at that price point. It's really, you know, apartments that you're helping.
But what, with this market change and the interest rates going up, you can get a 2-bedroom apartment on the Northern Beaches, lock-up garage for 800. And our family structures have changed a little bit too. You know, when I was a kid, you know, most families had 3. You know, you had one for mum, one for dad, and a spare, you know, if something happened. So, you know, like that. Now we're seeing smaller families. I'm in a family of 3, my wife, my daughter, and me.
Yeah, that's true. Something that I've been hearing a lot of lately, and I don't know how it's going to happen, but rent control is something that has been spoken about, capping that, you know, the amounts that rents can be.
Well, there's already been legislation in New South Wales to cap the number of times rents can go up. So a landlord can only increase the rent once in a 12-month period.
It's a tough one because it falls back on lending as well. You know,
well, it's no good having a lot of, you know, having affordable rentals if there's only one.
Yeah.
So you know that what you find with true market forces, you build more properties, build to rent. The supply of that then increases, and the rents naturally come down. Now it could be a stopgap measure, but you know, a free market will have a better outcome than legislation, because legislation you're always pull this string, slightly like we have with interest rates. Drop them. Repercussions a year later as we have high inflation. Raise them. You know, so I think more in more initiatives to get people with the capacity to build for rent. So what we mean by that is that they build properties that aren't sold, they're rented, and then for the purpose of being rented, and then they get tax benefits and incentives and higher density to encourage them, because as we said, in a capitalist democracy, you've got to encourage people with money to do the right thing.
Yeah, that's right. And that might be public-private, you know, partnerships and things like that.
Correct.
I'm not promoting anything over anything else. We're trying to come up with solutions here, but, you know, something like that might work as well.
And bearing in mind, if we had real solutions, we wouldn't be real estate agents. We'd be working in town, and we'd be at home at the moment getting a manicure. So, like Brad Hicks, the great Brad Hicks, my brother. So, Stev, real practical things now. I can't find somewhere to rent. How can I, you know, I go to a rental inspection. How can I get something for rent? How can I stand out
What's gonna
from
help
the
me
60
stand
other
out?
people that are trying to rent the same property?
Yeah, look, I would say that as a prospective tenant, you're out there, like Glenn said, it's pretty competitive. I would apply early for a property. So what I would have is either I would have sent an online application prior to viewing the property, or I would have one printed off and completed. And when I say completed, everything completed. You don't want the agent to call you back and chase you for bits of information. Have that pre-done at the open home, hand it to the agent, say, look, we really like it, there's my application, or I've already sent one this morning across to you. I really, really like the property. I'm ready to go. The reason I say that is I used to work back in the rental side of the business many years ago, and you always want to give your owner good news on a Saturday. So if you're a tenant and you've got an application and you're giving good news to your owner as an agent, that's a real positive. That's the best advice I can give, Glenn. There's not a whole lot. I know, some agents encourage offering more, but that's frowned upon in the industry. But I'd really say
legislation came out to say that we couldn't actively encourage like auctions for rentals.
Yep.
Really important if you're a current tenant. Bills come in. Sometimes it's hard to know which one to pay.
Yeah.
However, the payment of your rent is recorded on a ledger, and along with looking at your references, talking to your employer, seeing proof that you can pay the rent, it is the ledger.
Yes.
So that's another document. It shows when you pay, how you pay, if you miss, if you're behind, and sometimes that's separating people. If there has been periods where it was difficult to pay the rent, try to catch up and get ahead. And even when you apply for the property, because it will show up.
Yep.
Most experienced property managers can read that ledger. Some can't, but most can.
Yep.
Stevan and I can. Most agents, we start off in property management. Have an explanation why. Hey, I was changing jobs and I got caught up, and I've been caught up ever since.
Yep.
Own up to it. Don't just think no one will know. And as Steph said, turn up.
Yeah, try like as I love animals, I love pets. I'm constantly harassed by my 7.5-year-old daughter for a pet. But if you're renting, it's sometimes, I won't say it's not a good idea, but it's probably more favourable that you don't have a pet with you. That might help you.
Well, the legislation is now that in most Australian properties you can have a pet. However, some owners prefer not to.
Yep.
It's just a personal preference. And if you want to expose yourself to the widest number of owners, that could be something that stops you getting a rental, unfortunately. It's just one of those things. Also too, I would say to people, don't overstretch yourself. If you have to take something a little bit smaller, a little bit further out, while the rents are sky high. I can remember a time in my real estate career, you were getting 2 and 3 weeks rent free. It was probably the boom around 2003.
Yeah.
And you were also, a week to Bali to get someone to rent something. So there are cycles, and maybe some of these initiatives will help. I think with, the increase in immigration and people returning to Australia, bearing in mind, when we say an increase in immigration, these were people that had planned to come here before COVID, and their plans were delayed, and they're just picking up on them now. So there's a bit of a backlog, and they're getting through all that.
Yeah.
So, there's some tips. Buying's always been hard. We've never ever kept up with stock numbers. So that's why when you look, around the world, we never kept up with the number of homes being built to the number of people that wants to buy them. We just can't keep up. And that's why when you look around the world, you know, you can jump online, you can buy a 2-story house in Texas, you know, for 600 US, convert that, that's $1 million.
Yep.
A lovely 3-bedroom property in Arizona, 450.
Sounds
you
like
know,
you're in shopping.
oh, I'm always looking. I'm always looking. You know, you can buy, you know, on the beach in California for around $1 million, you know. But it's always been hard to secure a property. I'm a buyer. What should I do? I want to buy something. I want the agent to know I want to buy it. I don't want to miss out. I don't want to wake up and find it's gone.
Yep.
What should I do?
I would express my interest pretty early. If I see it on the day, you can tell the agent at the open, you know, I'm interested. I really like it. Can you send me a contract? Can you send me the paperwork? You know, as real estate agents as well, we're not. I don't know how to say this, but we're not here to mess people around. We're here to try to sell a property to a buyer. So indicate your interest early, you know, and be honest with us and say, okay, if you want to play games, that's welcomed as well. You know, you don't have to give us your best price straight away, but you know, an open conversation goes a long way in helping people get into property. Be ready, obviously, with your lending. Make sure you got your finance approved. You know, you got a good solicitor behind you, and you can act quickly. But my best advice would be indicate to the agent that you're interested in the property.
I concur with all that, Steve. I think the first thing is make sure you're in. Got everything in line to buy if you see the right one. We spoke about this the other day. Sometimes the first one you see, like first time I saw my wife, there was no one else for me. First girl I ever saw. So
your first kiss, I heard.
No, I'm still waiting for that. I've only been married 17 years. But they have all your ducks in line. Indicate to the agent that you'd like to make an offer on this. Make an offer. Keep in touch with them. You know, if it's an auction, the same process.
Yeah.
Just the same as renting.
Yes.
But I think just getting everything ready so you can act quickly. I you know, unfortunately, that's the sort of world and industry we work in. If someone can act quickly, they're normally taken first.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, that's a little bit from us. There's lots and lots of people that you can jump on, housing stress, read some of this information. Also, if you're undergoing a bit of stress from this, Lifeline, Beyond Blue, these sorts of programs can help you as well. We're noticing it with people buying. We're noticing it with some distress sales now. So just want to say to you, you know, everyone's in the same boat, and we wish you all the very best.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for viewing. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.